today because it's about to get easier. My name is Chris Westfall, and I want to say welcome to those of you that are joining me live. We're going to be streaming this evening's event. I am here at an undisclosed location on the University of Houston campus, and I am the folks at Gardner have been kind enough to host me here tonight, and they're going to introduce me in just a second. And I'm going to share some ideas around how to make things easier. And if you're wondering what things, the answer is everything. So thanks for joining on the live stream. I'm going to duck out, and they're going to introduce me, and we'll kick things off here in just a minute.
Just in case. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, there you go.
I promise we're going to start. We really are.
All righty. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out today. I know we had a couple of accidents on the road and the weather, but your presence is greatly appreciated today because I'm excited to talk to you guys about the speaker that's going to be talking to you all. Our guest speaker is an internationally recognized business coach. He is the best-selling author and keynote speaker. He is a regular contributor to Forbes. He's been recognized as the United States Elevator Pitch Competition champion, and voted as the top 10 business coach in the Houston area. His clients include Salesforce, Ernst & Young, Oil States International, Transwestern, Texas A&M, Cisco, and hundreds of high-growth organizations around the world. He works with the founders, executives, media personalities, political leaders via innovative workshops and leadership retreats.
I don't know what that is, but it's not me.
Always right? What could we do without it? His fourth book, Easier, an innovative story of the power inside coaching conversation, and we will be signing them today. We are available for purchase for $20 today. We do accept cards. And he's here to offer some new insight into self-leadership, personal performance, and professional impact. Please join me in welcoming Chris Westfall.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for that applause. I really appreciate that applause because I haven't done anything to earn it yet, and that makes it very valuable to me. But I will do my best in return for you coming out on this cold night to look in the direction of what makes things easier. And I'd like to start off with a quick question for you. If you can imagine that I have a deck of playing cards, and I want to get these cards through a spinning fan that separates me from you. In between us, there's a spinning fan. And I have these playing cards. What would you say would be the best way for me to get those cards through the spinning fan? Throw it? Would you throw them all at once or one at a time?
Maybe one at a time.
One at a time, but it'd probably get stuck in the blades.
I would slow the fan down.
Wait a minute.
Disconnect it.
Stop the fan? Stop the fan?
Does it still have to be spinning though?
I like you. You're an out-of-the-box thinker, and I didn't say there was a box. I like that. That's good. You'd slow it down. You'd stop the fan, right? So that we could share that information. So let's stop the fan. Let's stop the fan. Let's press pause. Let's step back and look at things in a new way. Let's look at some new insights, some insights that don't just rely on data and statistics and science, which I will share some of that tonight. But I want you to look also at your own experience. And as I share ideas with you, I want to talk tonight about the physics and engineering of easier. Now, physics is how things work, right? Engineering, how we make things work for you. Does this make sense? So, life is not easy, correct? Does that everybody agree with that? Life is not easy, but what I have discovered, and I want to ask you to look to your own experience, is that even in the midst of difficult circumstances, easier always exists. And let me explain what I mean by that. That there is a choice that makes even the toughest of times easier. And as I share these ideas with you, that looks to me to be like a principle, like the law of gravity. I mean, it doesn't matter what my personality type is. If I pick up these sunglasses and I drop it, what's going to happen? Doesn't matter where I went to school. Doesn't matter where I work. That's how the world works. That's the physics and engineering. So when we look in the direction of physics and engineering, and I'll point out some things that look to me to be true, such as easier always exists. And if that's hard for you to wrap your brain around, or you're like, I'm not too sure about that, Chris. Well, we've got some time to unpack that. But I want you to ask yourself a 3-word question as you hear the stories that I share tonight, and especially the principles that I share. And the 3-word question is this: is that true? And not true like a matter of belief. University of Houston is the greatest school in the state of Texas. Some may believe, I mean, you could argue that, right? But I figured I better play to the hometown crowd. I don't want to be like, what, A&M? No, wait a minute, back up the truck. But ask yourself, is that true? And I mean true with a capital T. True whether you are in Birmingham, Alabama, or Birmingham, England, right? Whether just things that are true that do not rely on faith or a matter of opinion. And what looks to be true to me is that easier always exists. And if you say, I'm not sure that easier exists, think about this question. How many possibilities exist for us right now in this moment, right here, right now? How many would you say? I mean, I could say Justin Bieber, avocados, street sign. What do you think? How many possibilities would you say exist right now? What would you say? 10?
Sure, 20.
20?
Infinite.
Who thinks it's more? Wait, what do you say? It's infinite, isn't it? I mean, what?
Of what though, like anything?
I mean, possibilities are anything, aren't
Okay,
they?
then anything, yeah.
Right? I mean, I could walk out this door, I could jump out the window, I could throw this to you.
There's no limit.
You all could leave. You're hearing that music, right? Because if not, I'm going to be in front of my therapist tomorrow. What is that? Yeah, I did not see that possibility. I did not see that possibility going. What is that? Is that yours? Is that?
Yes, we were hoping to use the speaker for you.
Oh, okay. Well, there you have it. Use the speaker to throw me off, I think, is what she means. The number of possibilities that exist in this moment is infinite. And it's easy for us to see that because we're relaxed. We've stopped the fan and it's easy for us to see. But what happens when things get difficult? And this is one of the ways that you can know that things are getting difficult, is when it looks like there's only one way forward. When it looks like there's only one way to win. Have you ever said that? There's only one way forward. I have. That's how life looks. When I don't see possibilities, life is very difficult. Even if that possibility, the only possibility that might exist that I see is the ability to choose how I'm reacting to my circumstances or to the people around me. Choice always exists. See what I'm saying? Even if we don't have the circumstances or the job or the boss or the relationship that we would choose, we can still choose how we respond. And how we respond is the key to making things easier, because how you show up creates the world around you. Let me say that again. How you show up creates the world around you. If I show up with ideas and books and insights, then we're having this conversation here. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So when I say how you show up, that means that tonight we'll talk a little bit about identity. It's one of the things that's touched on in the book. And identity not as a construct, not as an event inside the ego, but identity in terms of your human nature. And what I mean by your human nature is that if you think about it, we are all humans in nature. If you unpack that a little bit, I mean, right? Right? Yeah. Yeah, you're like, where's the insight, Chris? I know, it's coming. No. Sometimes when we say things that are true, It helps us to see things in a new way because now we're talking about physics and engineering. And in my experience, when I'm in front of smart people, it might be a little bit of a stretch for the second row, but I'm kidding. I'm kidding. When I'm in front of smart people, when you explain how things work, they typically learn and adapt and learn how to make things work for them. So, where was I going with all of that? I met a surfer by the name of Murray Wilcox. Murray Wilcox is from Cape Town, South Africa. 23 years old, studied engineering at the University of Cape Town, and this guy has been in the ocean his entire life. Grew up in the sea, and he is an extreme surfer, which means he's looking for waves that are 15 to 25 feet high. So I meet this guy, fascinating guy, very cool cat. And I'm from the Midwest. I mean, surfing is quite exotic to me. Cape Town, South Africa, I've never been. It's quite exotic to me. And I'm fascinated by this guy, especially because when you were at the top of a 15-foot wave, I knew from some of the research that I had done that wave can weigh 600 tons. So even if you are an expert surfer, if you get on the wrong side of that wave, you can be crushed. So when you're at the top of the wave, it's really a matter of life and death. Regardless of your experience, it's a matter of life and death at the top of the wave. So I said to Murray Wilcox, because I was curious, I go, what's going through your mind when you're at that moment of life and death? When you're at the top of the wave, what is it that you are thinking of? I mean, are you thinking, I'm going to go right, left, 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 right? Are you thinking about what your coach said to you last week? Are you thinking about somebody that you saw, crash in the waves or something like that? Thank God you're here. How you doing? Welcome, welcome. It's okay. I'm just goofing around. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. These are the jokes. I'm going to raise my hand when I'm doing the jokes. So I'm talking about Murray Wilcox, a friend of mine from Cape Town, South Africa. He's an extreme surfer. He's at the top of a 15-foot wave, and I go, Murray, what's going through your mind? Do you have a plan? Are you getting ready to execute a plan? What are you going to do? What do you think Murray Wilcox said? What is going through Murray Wilcox's head at the top of a 15-foot wave in the matter of life and death? I'm taking off this sweater. Don't freak out. What do you think he was thinking?
Gonna go with the way as somebody that surfs.
You surf?
I have.
He's going to go with the wave. So what does that mean? What was on his mind?
What's the water doing?
He's going with the water. He's literally going with the flow.
Yeah. You can't do anything else.
That's exactly what he said. He said nothing. Nothing. No plan. Because, man plans, God laughs, especially when it comes to surfing. And I have a coach that I've worked with for years. She's from Southern California, and she is a surfer. And she says, in surfing, what we say, nature always wins. Nature always wins. And here's what shows up for me as truth with a capital T, and I realize this about myself, is that I'm not like Murray Wilcox at the top of the wave. I am a natural planner. Anybody else natural planner? I mean, you give me 10 things, I'll stack rank them, I'll put them in a list. And so this is me. Very good drawing, don't you think? And I find myself experiencing something like this, where I have stuff on my mind, and I have duties and obligations, and I have meetings, and I have clients, and I have people that support me and people that aren't supporting me. And as I add up all these thoughts, I have more and more and more and more and more on my mind. And what that turns me into is a Now, you may say, so Chris, what are you trying to say? Ignorance is bliss, that we should just forget about our duties and responsibilities. What I'm saying is that the way you show up creates the world around you. And even in the midst of obligations, duties, requirements, you can show up differently. Easier is always available if we choose to see it. Because as we've already established in this moment, every possibility, it's infinite how many possibilities exist. Even in the midst of difficult times, even in the midst of difficult conversations, even in the midst of our obligations, easier exists. So let's talk about ways to access it. Let's talk about ways to get less. Less on our mind. And maybe that is the lesson for our conversation today. I want you to remember, if you can, the Yahoo strategy in any circumstance. And this is not the search engine. Yahoo stands for you always have other options. And if it looks like that, nope. If it looks like there's only one way to win, I mean, imagine an athlete that comes to the coach and says, "Hey, coach, there's only one way to win." What's the coach going to say? Sit down. Sit down. Your job is to find every way to win. And isn't it true that when sports get really exciting, you can pick the sport of your choice. Mine happens to be baseball. But pick the sport of your choice. And it's when the play breaks down. It's when the unexpected happens that we find ourselves, that we find our identity. And I'm talking about your identity when you aren't on your mind. I'm talking about that thing that you bring to the table that is not a construct or an ego thing or something that's reflected on a business card or your address or the amount of money in your bank or who you're married to or not married to or whatever. That identity is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your human nature. I'm talking about the thing inside of you that is trying to come through. Some call that flow, right? Some call that connecting with source and stuff. And if that feels a little woo-woo to you, it does to me too. But I don't have better words to describe it other than to say, look to your own experience and what do you know to be true about when you are at your best. And there are a few things that have helped me to show up differently in the midst of difficult circumstances. I had a very difficult circumstance that I went through, and it's actually one of the chapters in the book. I had a very difficult circumstance that I went through during COVID because I lost my dad to COVID. And my father was not just my dad, he was a good friend. And we were very close. He was just 77 at the time. And it was in the early days of COVID. It was even before his county had a mask mandate that he tested positive. And he tested positive on Monday. By Friday, he was gone. Boom. And this was he was prime of life, in great health, apparently so. But you know, when COVID comes calling, and I'm sure you all have perhaps similar stories. We've all COVID took something from all of us, right? So, not to be Debbie Downer on a cold and gray day, but I had to find a way to get through a really, really difficult circumstance. And I would find myself sitting in Houston traffic at a red light, and just the grief would grab me, and I would start to weep. I would, and I'm like, Chris, you need to get it together. You need to get it together. And I would find myself going, how am I going to get through this? Right? How am I going to cope? How am I going to deal with this? I need a coping mechanism. I need a strategy or something. Here's what showed up for me in the midst of this gut-wrenching difficulty. And I mean, I could tell you the rest of the story. My dad had donated his body to science, but they refused the body because of COVID. So I had to have him cremated. He lives 5 states away. What fun that was. And of course, it was COVID time. So what do you think we did I never thought my living room would be a funeral parlor. And yet, not a good time. But in the midst of how am I going to get through this, something shifted. And I realized that if I was going to stop these tears, which I wanted to get my hands around, I'm a dude, I wanted to be strong. But what I realized was that the strength was coming through those tears, because if I were going to shut them off, I'd have to shut off the way that I felt for my dad. I couldn't do that. I couldn't shut off his memory. They say that grief is love persevering. And that's true. And grief never goes away. But I'm here to tell you, believe me if you can, that it does get easier. And what made it easier for me was when I shifted from how am I going to get through this to what can I get from this. And when I made that shift to what can I get from this, it gave me, I'm not going to say control, but I'm going to say agency. It gave me the chance to look at it differently. And I share this story with you tonight, not to make you sad, but to make you see that we all have the ability to step back and say, what can I get from this? The worst things that have happened to me in my life, I look at as blessings. And I'm not just trying to spin doctor that. I'm not just trying to give some kind of, positivity or toxic positivity for the HR. Coming soon to a Forbes article near you. Anyway, I'm not trying to put spin on things. I mean, look, the way that I see it is that if things are going to get easier, we have to deal with things as they are. Like Murray Wilcox on the top of a wave. You can't sit there and go, I've got a 19-step plan. And this is how it's going to go, by God. I'm not saying that planning is not useful. I'm sure that Murray Wilcox planned on wearing a wetsuit. I'm sure that he planned on waxing his board. I'm sure that he planned on having a good meal before he got out there. Or maybe he didn't because he was afraid he'd get cramps. I don't know how surfing works. But I know how surfing works. Because I'm not a surfer from Cape Town, but I'm surfing through life just like you are. And what I'm pointing to, or trying to point to, is the human condition, that thing that connects us, that thing that not that separates us, but that unites us, that we all share inside, those experiences that we can relate to. And when we see that there are similarities, that there are things that we can relate to, things get easier. What else can make things easier? Well, I just gave you one thing in the midst of difficulty. If you can get from how am I going to cope with this to what can I get from this? And another version of that, another phrase that you can ask yourself, I'll write it up here on the board. Let's see, where's, I want to do it in a different color. And you got to be careful. You got to watch your timing on this, because if you ask this question at the wrong time, somebody punch you in the face. But well, it came with a warning label. Here it comes. What's good about this? HR folks, somebody comes in your office and they want to burn some time just griping and complaining. And I'm not saying sweep those issues under the rug. I'm saying what's good about this can help people to do something that's very powerful towards making things easier. You know what it is? Zoom out. I did this at Microsoft and they got really mad. They're like, are you advocating for it? No, it means step back. Step back. When we see, when we get granular on things, sometimes you got to get granular on things. I understand that. But when difficulties, when we sit there, and here's how you can know that you're getting granular on it, you're going, I got to figure this out. I got to have a plan. I got a plan to overcome this. What happens if you zoom out? What happens? Crazy talk coming now, here it is. What happens if you don't have to have a plan? Have you ever had a moment in your life where you have not had a plan and it worked out perfectly? I married a redhead, ladies and gentlemen. Did not see that coming. Did not see that coming. Yeah. Don't try this at home. I'm going live. Well, the internet's my favorite place to embarrass myself, so there you go. Think about times when life has been unplanned and it has been fantastic. Think about when you haven't been able to see other options. Think about when you haven't been able to zoom out. And how does that feel? What's that like? It is. It is. I feel the same way. And believe me, I mean, I'm talking about this stuff. I'm talking about my experiences. I mean, I'm not walking around like in some state of Zen bliss, with my redhead skipping down. Oh, it's all sunshine and peppermints for me.
I see it as an adrenaline rush.
What is it? That's the adrenaline rush.
Not knowing what's coming.
Do you like the unknown?
I do.
I think that's really cool. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Did that scare you?
Yeah.
It's just cool because like for her, it's exciting for her. She's like, that's so stressful.
Yeah.
So it's like everyone's
I like
perception.
that.
I'm with her though. I feel the same way.
I
think
think
it is
because
exciting.
you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So why not just run
I'm
the full force towards it?
I'm
That's how I
planner
see it.
in a relationship.
Yes.
I feel like you can both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a planner too. I mean, seriously, I'm an inveterate
Depends on the
planner.
state.
Yeah, I think so.
I can see that.
It depends on what it is, I think, yeah.
Here's the thing. This is my best. This is my absolute best drawing that I'm going to do all night. And I know that you will love it because it relates to planning and going into
We're gonna hold you to that.
the unknown. Well, you'll see it for yourself. You look. I mean, as they say, it ain't bragging if you can do it. So here's my best picture of the night. This is the universe. I don't even know what this is here. All right, this is the universe. And if you could indicate to me, if you were going to draw the part of this that is known, what would you do? Because if it were me, I would do something like this. And scientists will tell you, physicists will tell you that we have an understanding of less than 4% of the known universe, and that statistic changes depending on who you talk to and that sort of thing. But in the midst of that, what that means is what? That planning is worthless because it's overwhelming and there's no way to know the unknown. No, of course, we have the ability to influence the way that we show up. And sometimes for planners, what has really helped me is being able to see that my ability to adapt is part of my DNA. And that I have the ability to adapt to unexpected circumstances. That redheaded woman in my house is proof. And so are those 2 kids. Anyway, if any of you don't have kids and you want one, I'll give you. I'm kidding. Come on. No, I have beautiful daughters. I love them to death. They walk on the ground that I worship. But here's my point. Where on this picture of what is known and what is unknown, where is net new revenue? Where is new opportunities with existing customers? Where is the opportunity to observe something new? Where is fresh? Where are you? And if you were more comfortable here, would things get easier? In my experience, and again, I can't speak for you, but in my experience as a planner, as someone who makes lists in his sleep, being able to understand that I could navigate these waters really made things easier. And that's not a matter of motivational mumbo jumbo. It's built into our DNA. And I share about it in the book. And I heard about it from a scientist, a neuroscientist, in fact, by the name of David Eagleman. Have you ever heard of this guy? He actually spent time in Houston. He went to, he studied at Baylor here in Houston. And he's kind of a Houston guy, but he works at Stanford now. And he wrote a book that is, for my money, the most powerful, compelling, inspiring, motivational book that I've read in the last 10 years. And it's a science book. It's called Live Wired by David Eagleman. And it's all about how our brains are live wired to adapt. And here's the premise of Eagleman's book. He looks at people who have lost things in their lives, such as an arm, sense of sight, the ability to hear. And as a neuroscientist, the examination of the brain, I guess, is what that, I'm a plain spoken guy. These $12 words, I mean, they're a bit of a mystery. I had to look it up. But anyway. But as a neuroscientist, he looked at how the brain was able to rewire itself. And in fact, do you know how blind people read? What is that called? Braille, right. And the way that blind people are able to read Braille is that the part of the brain that controls eyesight, when you lose your eyesight, becomes rewired so that that part of your brain is activated when you touch things. That's how Braille works. It's a rewiring that happens inside your brain. And scientists knew this, and they did an experiment. I believe it happened in Spain, but don't get me to lying. They looked at taking people who could see, and they put blindfolds on them. And they monitored their brains and their brain patterns to see how quickly this area of the brain, which is the back of the brain, would be activated, and their senses would start to rewire. Within an hour, their brains started rewiring. And what were these people doing to make it happen? Were they in the gym going, make my eyes work differently? No, they were just blindfolded. It happened naturally. It's part of our DNA. And what I took from this story of blindness, a challenge I've never had I've had my challenges, but that's not been one of them. But I took it as, wait a minute, what he's saying is that if I lose something, I have the ability to adapt and to change. I may not like it, My coach said to me, you know, the road to easier, sometimes there's some difficulty on that road. She was right. Eagleman goes on to say, take a look at the Komodo dragon. You know what a Komodo dragon is? It's the largest lizard, right? You know what it is. I mean, they're huge. They have them at the Houston Zoo, by the way. They're gigantic lizards. And he says, imagine you take a Komodo dragon from 30,000 years ago via a time machine, and a Komodo dragon, the one that's at the Houston Zoo from yesterday. Those two Komodo dragons are about the same. I mean, they're exactly the same. They eat, they sleep, they procreate, they do whatever Komodo dragons do. They're both the same. You and I, compared to men and women from 100 years ago, our IQs are markedly higher. How is that possible? It's the University of Houston, ladies and gentlemen. That's exactly right. No, it's because we are adapting and changing all the time. And we're able to think of concepts that people in 1923 couldn't even imagine now. They couldn't even imagine it back then. So what this means is, it's not a matter of motivation. It's one of those things that fits in the category of, is that true? We are live wired to adapt. We may not like it, but we have that ability. And when we see that, not from a standpoint of anything other than science, I find that really empowering and really powerful. And that's not a story what Eagleman is sharing is a story about all of us. Even if we haven't lost limbs or sight or other senses, we've all lost something. Here we are, right? Still standing, still sharing, still letting life come through me. And so are you. And that to me is, I think, the most empowering and powerful message that we can share. So what is it for you that's trying to come through that might not be on the plan, that might look like something that's impossible? I was doing an interview one time on, I think it was a TV interview, and the host, I did a thing for PBS out of Permian Basin. I went out there to Permian Basin. And she said, if you were going to write because she was asking about, is easier autobiographical, and I'll talk about the book in a minute. It's a business fable, and there are elements that are autobiographical. I do talk about the loss of my father and some other things that have happened to me. Some coaching conversations that I've had, some coaching conversations that have been had with me, but more about that later. But I was out there in Permian Basin, and the host said to me, Chris, there's a lot of autobiographical elements in this, but if you were going to write your autobiography, what would you call it? And I said, without hesitation, something from nothing. And I'll tell you why. A couple of things. And again, this just ask yourself, is this true? Every book ever written always starts with the exact same place. It's a blank page. That's true for every business plan. It's true for every resume. See what I'm saying? And if I'm comfortable with that blank page, I just admire this so much. If I'm comfortable with that blank page, if I'm comfortable with the unknown, what that means to me is that I take it as an opportunity to create. And the coaching question that I would ask you, if you're open to it, is what is it that you want to create for yourself, for others, for your organization? Which is different than, are you at your plan? Right. How many people have you called this week? How many emails did you send? You see what I mean? I've been there. I've been the guy being asked that question. I've been the guy who has to ask that question. And I've discovered that there's a question that is more expansive, that opens up possibility. Because when we see possibility, that's what we're going to see in the Super Bowl. We're going to see two teams that are going to see, there's going to be plays that are going to break down as sure as I'm standing here in front of you. And whichever team is going to win, probably the Eagles, whichever team is going to win, they're going to be the ones who work beyond the plan. Does that make sense? We all have the capacity, maybe not to be in the NFL and work beyond our plan, but certainly in our lives to work beyond our plans. And so that's what I would ask you is what is it that you want to create for yourself? And then on the flip side of that, Who would you need to be in order to bring that plan into life? Which is different than how much money would you need, or what software would you like to buy, or what app do you need? You see what I'm saying? Who do you need to be? In other words, what is your identity? And that identity, not an ego exercise, that comes from service. What is that service that you can provide? And can you provide it in a way that's more powerful than you have before? Can you provide it one conversation at a time? Can you provide it in a way that makes things easier for others? Because at the end of the day, what companies hire and what they're looking for is one thing only: solutions providers. No, I mean, I don't know what all roles you're in. Some of you I had a chance to talk to, but I don't know what all roles you're in. But the solution that you provide is the key to the compensation you receive and the service that you offer to your employer, to your customers, to the people you care about. What could make that easier? That's the question. Bill Gates said, "I will hire a lazy person to do a difficult job, because a lazy person will always find an easier way to do it." I felt like he sees me. That's what I felt. Easier is a story about someone who is frustrated in his job. He's not sure how to make the contribution that he wants to make. He's not sure how to have an impact, and he's been struggling for a couple of years. So he hires a coach to help him to figure out what's next. That's where the story begins. And from there, a conversation ensues that illustrates some of the things that we're talking about here tonight. But the fact is that easier always exists, and it's waiting for you. Like your potential. I used to think my potential was something like out there that I'll never get to. You know what I mean? Like Katie. It is. That's right. I'm lying, I'm dying. But I always thought my potential was out there, but actually it's right here. I mean, I have the potential to share new ideas. I have the potential to let ideas come through me. I have the potential to share insights and to hopefully share something that's going to be of value. And so do you. That potential always exists. I'm not trying to pump you up. I'm trying to say, look at what is. Because I'll tell you what is that it's never tougher than it is in your mind. And if you've got some thinking around a situation, welcome to the human race, so do I. Every one of my situations. And what we saw from that surfer in South Africa, and what we know intuitively, is that when we show up with less on our minds, we're better. We are more flexible. We see more options. What would seeing more options mean for you in your life, in your relationships? What if you could see something fresh? What if you could see a bold plan for this Jefferson? Here's a question for you. Does information lead to realization? If I have more information, can I make a decision? And let me give you an example. The question is, does information lead to realization? Imagine, if you will, that there are donuts in this room. Delicious Shipley's donuts, covered with sugar. You know what I'm talking about? They're delicious. Do you love donuts? I love donuts. They're delicious. And I know that I love donuts. I have that knowledge. I have that information. But I also have information about something called the glycemic index. And I also have information about processed foods and my girlish figure and all that kind of stuff. And I know that donuts are not a good idea. So I have information. And guess what I also have? I also have experience. And my experience says that after I have a donut, about an hour and a half later, you know what I'm like this. I just, and I feel terrible. It tastes good, but then so anyway, I have information. I have knowledge. I have experience. My question to you is am I going to have a donut?
Yes.
I feel seen. Now my question is, so information did not lead to realization. What if you said, how can I help him to not have a donut? What would you say?
It doesn't taste good.
I'd argue with you on that. I go, oh, it's delicious.
It got burnt today.
It got burnt.
These are from
Well, if it was
yesterday.
Krispy
You change it
Kreme-
out.
If it was Krispy Kreme, then you wouldn't eat it.
How do you know?
Well, what are your goals?
Just don't bring them around.
Your goals are-
Hold on a second, say it louder.
What are your goals? So you asked that, and how do you
3 donuts.
kind of-
That's my quota for the day. But I think you might be on the right track. Here's the thing that I've discovered. Yeah, are you trying to lose weight? Here's the thing that I've discovered is that sometimes reminding people is more powerful than finding fault in what they do. And asking questions is a great way to get people to look at things differently. But having donuts or not having donuts, it's really a matter of discipline, when you say. And isn't it true that discipline, again, is that true question? Isn't it true that discipline is just remembering what it is that you want? Remembering that in 90 minutes, come what may, you're going to feel lousy. What happens if we shift from finding fault to reminding people what they're capable of? Reminding people what it is that they want, not just saying, what are your goals, but reminding people. And of course, you have to have that connection to say, I know what your goals are. I know that you don't want to feel lousy in 90 minutes or trash your girlish figure or spike your blood sugar or all the other things that come with those delicious donuts. I'm thinking about them now. No, I'm kidding. But so what can we do to find new solutions? Because they're here. They're. I mean, we may not see them because we're focused on this. But can we pull back? Can we see new possibilities? Because they always exist, just like easier always exists, even when things aren't easy. Does this make sense? I was super fired up when I was able to go back to the gym after COVID. I was fired up to do that because I was being a bit of a house cat, like so many people, and I was so psyched to go back to the gym that I rode my bike to the gym. And I rode up to the gym, and I'm looking at the gym, and I'm like, oh, there's a tree right over there. And I ride my bike over to the tree because it's a hot day. It's a hot day. It's Houston, right? And I walk my bike in the tree, and I go into the gym, and I'm working out, benching 350. But I'm working out and I get a little thirsty and I'm like, I remember I had a bottle of water on my bike. So I go outside to go to my bike and I look at the tree and the tree is standing there all by itself and my bike is gone. Gone. And have you ever had this happen to you? Where you lose something and you go, I've lost my mind. And I'm like looking around, I'm like, I go into the parking lot, I'm like, did I drive here? What? I mean, I'm losing my mind. And I finally it hits me. And there were so I walk over to the tree. There's not like a chain like a chain has been cut, like a link of chain or something like that. It's gone. And I'm pissed. I'm mad. Very mad. And I walk back into the gym and they're like, hey, welcome back. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. And I'm just furious. And I'm mad at myself. I'm like, why did I ride my bike? So I go through the rigmarole with the manager. Of course, we'll look at the cameras. We have cameras in the parking lot. Of course they have cameras in the parking lot. And they're up on lights. And they look right at the top of the tree. So nothing, right? Which makes me even madder. And I'm very frustrated. And I'm sharing this story with one of my clients. We're doing a group coaching call. I've got people from all over the world. It's a Fortune 500 company, people from all over the world. And I'm sharing this story with them. And I keep going. And I say, well, but here's the thing that I realized after I got home. I had to call my wife to come pick me up. I was very proud of that moment. And she did. And once I got home and my thinking settled down a little bit, here's what I realized. I could go get a new bike. Mm-hmm. I had the money to get a new bike. Lucky me. Guess what I'm rolling around in now? A better bike. I have a better bike. Still the bitterness, you can tell. Right? But I have a better bike than what I had before. And the point of this story is that when we get angry, we don't see possibilities. We just start. And sometimes we, right? What's that possibility that you're not seeing? What's that possibility that makes things easier? Is it possible that you could have a better bike waiting out there for you? I did. And I had a little bit of money and I was able to go and buy a bike. And it's not a fancy bike or anything like that. It's just a bike, but I love it. And I'm telling this story, Fortune 500 client that I'm working with, 50 people on the call, and somebody comes off the mic. And she goes, Chris, are you sure you locked your bike? And all of a sudden, I was like having this moment of zen, and all of a sudden, I'm like, and it made me mad again. Because I was like, didn't I establish that in the story that I locked the bike to the tree? She was just trying to be helpful. Do you know anybody like that? Who they're just like, well, did you remember to lock your bike? From me to you, don't find, remind. Don't find fault. And for the engineers in the room, they're looking around to pound out variances and make things stay within limitations. I'm saying this to everybody. Don't find, remind. Somebody comes to you with a problem. Try this on for size. Somebody comes to you with a problem. Before you move to solve the problem, relate to the problem. Relate to the problem. I mean, if you wanted to talk to me about my bike, and this person had better people skills or better coaching from me, maybe I should have helped her. I don't know. Anyway, it's a long story. But if she had known to remind me instead of find my faults, things would have been easier. And sometimes reminding people that you've been there, like if she had been able to say, I've had my bike stolen too, that sucks. I didn't have my bike stolen, but I had my tennis racket stolen, or something. I had something taken from me. Because now all of a sudden when people come to you and they go, I've got an issue, I'm here to solve it. When you relate to it, you're both on the same side of the issue and you're connecting around your humanity. That's that human nature. That's that identity that we all share. That is beyond our ego exercise and all that kind of stuff. So how can you relate to a problem? How can you remind people that you've been there? Because from that place, you find a way to help others to see things in a way that makes it easier for them. Does this make sense? Okay. Look at my notes here and see if there's... Okay. There's one other thing that can help. Oh gosh, we're running a little bit. How are we doing on time? Are we doing okay? Are y'all doing okay?
Yes.
There's more pizza. There's one thing also that makes helping people and managing people a little easier and leading people a little easier. I want to share with you just a quick story, about an experiment that was conducted by Helen Langer and a team of researchers at Harvard University. And this was a few years back, but they did research into the nature of agreement and compliance. In other words, how you get people to say yes. And a big part of my work has been helping people with their pitches and that sort of thing, and helping entrepreneurs and helping people get on Shark Tank and that kind of thing. So I've done a lot of work around communications and being persuasive. How can you be authentically persuasive? So here's this study from Harvard University looking into the nature of agreement and compliance, getting people to say yes. So I read this with deep interest. And here's what Helen Langer and her team of researchers did. They went into libraries, this a few years back, into libraries where people are lined up to use the copy machine, okay? And they walk in and they say, excuse me, do you mind if I cut in line? I have to make 5 copies. Excuse me, do you mind if I cut in line? I have to make 5 copies. My question to you is, what percentage of the time do people say, yeah, sure, you can make copies? 5%? Did you say 5? What? That's kind of a low number. What part of New Jersey are you from?
He's gonna be like, no, I'm first in line. You gotta wait like everybody else. It's gonna be the first time to pop through your mind.
That's right. Makes sense to me. He's a focused guy. You're a focused guy. I like that. Yeah. 5%. What? Does everybody think it's 5%?
No, I think it's much
50?
higher.
Wait. Why? Now hold on a second. Why do you say higher? And I'll come to you. Why do you say higher?
Because if someone's gonna ask you to do that, in my head, there must be some sense of urgency for them. And I'm not in a hurry, so why not? That's the way I would interpret it.
So what's your number? He says 5. What do you say?
I would say like 60.
60.
I would say 60%.
60. Really? Wow. Okay. 60% for you. What do you say? What were you going to say?
I don't know about like percentage, but I think it'd be higher just because they're like relating to you saying like yeah, sense of urgency, but also they're asking, and it's like they're saying quantity, like they're quantifying. I have 5 copies. So if there was a long line, it's like, well, just 5 copies. Go ahead, real quick. So I feel like them being more detailed would give a little bit more probability to.
But you have to take it, you have to, I mean, you have to take the case as given. They didn't really provide more details, so what would you say? 5, 60, what's your number?
50.
Split the difference? That's great. That's kind of an MBA answer, right? It depends. 50-50. Split it right down the middle. You know what's really interesting, and this rarely happens, but when I ask this question of a group and somebody gets the number exactly right, they get a free copy of my book. It was 60%.
Wow.
60%. That is exactly right. Yeah. And by the way, I'll sign that for you. You know why? Because if I sign it, it's worth more on eBay. Anyway, are we having fun yet? So they didn't stop there. Where are my napkins that are posing as papers? Okay, so they didn't stop there. They went back in, because they're scientists. They want to introduce a variable and see if they can influence it. So they went back into libraries. People lined up to use the copy machine. They went in, and this is what they said this time. They said, excuse me, do you mind if I cut in line? I have to make 5 copies because I'm in a hurry. Excuse me, do you mind if I cut in line? I have to make 5 copies because I'm in a hurry. What do you think happens to the number now?
Went down.
What do you think it goes down to? 25%? Okay. 10, even lower. This guy, he started at 5. For this guy, a fist fight. That's it. Get this. Oh, is that right? Oh, okay. Well, and everybody who's with us live is like, where did he go? Just to the back of the room. So get this, everybody. The number went up.
What?
The number went up. The number went up to 94%.
I'm actually surprised.
No, of course it went up because they're saying like the reason why, like if somebody's in a hurry, like yeah.
It kind of supports your point from before. And this is what the scientists thought. Was that what you were going to say?
No, well, I mean, like, if you're just coming up to me and telling me, like, hey, I'm in a hurry, like, bro, go back. But if you're giving me a reason, now I have something that can relate to you.
Well, the reason is that I'm in a hurry. Is that relatable?
That's what I thought too.
But see, he didn't say that at first, right? Like, he just said, here's 5. I just need 5 copies real quick. No, I can't relate to that.
I got what you're saying. So you're not surprised that it went up. Of course it went up because, and see, this is like what the scientists thought, because they thought, okay, here it is. We just need to have a reason. And maybe we just need to use the word because. And if we do, because it's like a magic word. Oh my God, we're Harvard scientists. We don't deal with magic words. We introduce hypotheses and we test theories. So they introduced another variable and they went back into libraries where people are lined up to use the copy machine. They walked in and they said, excuse me, do you mind if I cut in line? I have to make 5 copies because I have to make copies. What do you think happened now? No, he just says no. The answer is no. So, of course, the number went down, but get this, to 93%. 93%. Are you surprised? The researchers were stunned. They were like, this is really, we've hit on something here. You just have to give a reason, even a lame reason, and it works. It works. So there's power, and because is like a magic word, but they didn't stop there because they're good scientists and they tested another variable. They ran another experiment. This time they went in and they said, excuse me, do you mind if I cut in line? I have to make 20 copies because I'm in a hurry, because I have to make copies. What do you think happened in the number? Through the floor, way, way, way down. Why?
Because it's a larger run.
It's 20
more time.
Unrealistic expectations. You follow me? Unrealistic. What do you think?
Well, and the 20 may actually be a higher number than many of the people that are waiting in line. So if somebody is even doing more than you, then you're not going to let them go ahead.
Yeah.
That's right.
If it's front track, bro.
This guy. You are the copy police, man. You are going to get guardrails.
Yeah, we're not gonna
Are they color copies? Get out of here. Sometimes I share this information at colleges and universities. I find myself in front of an audience that is filled primarily with young single gentlemen, and they hear about the power of the word because. And they say to themselves, well, what if I go into an eating or drinking establishment and I see a beautiful woman and I walk up to her and I say, excuse me, would you like to come home with me because? And for these folks, I just have to say, realistic expectations. Because is a powerful word, but it is not a magic word. And what that means is that the people around you, they want to know why. The classic question, answer to the question, why? Any of you have kids say why, what do you say back? That's not because I said so. It's a little gentler in my house than yours, okay? But you do say because, of course you do. And that's the thing that I want to leave you with tonight is to remember. It's a good idea to start with why, but because is what makes things easier for people around you. Because you're giving them a reason. Even if they're people that work for you, they're paid to do what you're telling them to do. But they still want to know why. They still deserve to know why. And that comes from your because. The moral of this story from the Langer study is don't go for 20. Keep it short. And what can you say and do to make this easier? Because 20, not easy. 5, easier. And because, with a good reason, makes it easier still. Remember, my friends, from me to you, easier always exists. And when we get comfortable with knowing that we can show up in the unknown, with knowing that it's a good idea to plan, but when the plan goes sideways, we still show up, we still have the ability to zoom out. And when we continue to see those possibilities, no matter what it is that you're going through right now, I promise you it's going to get easier. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. My name is Chris Westfall. I'm the U.S. National Elevator Pitch Champion. Thanks for having me. Thanks for sticking with me if you did. This concludes our broadcast.